a lot of that is when you talk about when they're getting out and them having that negative stigmatism. I mean, if they're coming out of my facility, I'm doing my absolute best to make sure that they're set up for success. But when they hit the streets, like you said, a lot of society, a lot of times they might look down on them as you know, they're like, oh well, you were in prison, you're this, you're that. And so for me, it's just about nobody talks about it.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Lifestrong Project. Again, I'm your gracious host, AyeCee. And as always, it is an honor and a privilege to have you guys with us today. So let me ask this question. So what happens when the systems created to care for people begin quietly erasing? All right. Today's guest has spent his entire career standing at the intersection of education, law enforcement, fatherhood, and incarceration. He's an educator, he's an author, he's a school leader, and he currently leads a school inside a state prison. Through his research, writing, and independent publishing imprint, Plain Sight Press, he examines the hidden ways institutions shape identity, fracture families, and determine who is seen and who is forgotten. So, on today's episode, Lifestrong family, I want you to give it up for my gracious guest, Mr. Khalid Ashraf. I'm sorry, right? Ashraf. Did I get it right?
You got it, brother. You got it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man. This. You know what? This is there are certain episodes that you do, right, or that I do, that, and I'm gracious for every host that I have. I'm not belittling them at all, but you get lucky enough to have that one episode where you know that it's that episode that needs to be had. Like, it's that conversation within the community that is always had. Incarceration, the numbers of incarceration, especially amongst Black men, the reasons for incarceration, and what can they do after they get out, and things of that nature. And so something like this conversation, I'm gracious to finally find a guest that could shed some light and some perspective on it. But before we get to the nitty gritty, let's talk about Khalid before the law enforcement, before what you're doing for adult males now. Let's talk about where he came from and his beginnings, and try to get into what why you chose to go into this field. So tell me a little bit about yourself, sir.
For me, I was born and raised in Philly, and I'm a '70s child.
So, we both are.
Yeah. So for me, I was born and raised in Philly, and I grew up, I guess you would say, a little bit too quick, and I was a father real young. So I was fortunate enough to have parents that even though I was a father early, they were like, well, look, you still going to school, you still got to do what you got to do. So as soon as I finished school, I was looking for a job, and the first job I found was being a cop. They were taking you right off the street, 20 years old. I think all you had to do was have a high school diploma. I was like, well, I got that. I ain't got much else, but I got that. So 20 years old, couldn't carry a gun on the street, couldn't do much else, but I was a cop. I was a Philly cop. Yeah, 20. It's funny, time. I couldn't drink. Really, I couldn't even legally carry a gun. And I was doing it, but I had to, because it was I was already at the intersection, like, well, what am I going to do? You know, because my family had already invested enough in me. They were like, well, we're not going to let you fail. So then it was like, all right, well, now you got this. Now what you going to do? So then I just had to, I had to take care of, my kids. So
Right. Oh, so you had kids. So you had kids by then, by the age
I
of
had
20.
one. I had one.
Okay.
I
All
had
right.
one at yeah, it's one. I had one when
Okay.
I
All
was
right. And so I'm trying to, man, because like you said, you couldn't even legally hold a firearm at the age of 20, and I'm trying to, I'm in no way, shape, fashion, or form am I, saying this about you. I'm just remembering me at 20. Okay,
Right.
I'm
Right.
just I'm remembering me at 20.
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
now so I was holding a different firearm. I was in the army, but it's a little bit
Right.
different. I
Yeah.
think, especially on the streets of Philly, beloved city. I know that city of brotherly love, but it's
Philly.
that's yeah,
You're right.
it's sometimes left open to interpretation, right? But
Right. Right.
but uh, but I'm trying to paint the picture of young Khalid
Mm.
on at 20 years old.
Yep.
20, and you're in that, like you said, you were in the 70s, so 20 years old, you were what? This was the 80s? No, what? The 90s, young 90s?
This was the early 90s.
Early 90s.
This was the crime bill era.
So around the time so around the time Who's the Man came out, right? So so
Yes.
so here you
Yeah.
are, in the prime of your life,
Right.
probably grew up around people that didn't take kindly to cops.
Oh no, I was
Um,
around a whole bunch of revolutionaries. Yeah,
yeah,
did not
so
take kind. Oh
and then
no, this
all of
was
a
like you said, late
sudden,
70s. They're 70s, so
yeah,
there was a bunch of revolutionaries.
so all of a sudden, here's Khaled showing up with a badge and a gun.
Yeah.
What was that
Oh man, that conversation was wild.
like?
The whole time I was because, but you know what though? Um, it shaped me, and I think it shaped me in ways I didn't know at the time, because I grew up with a bunch of
Mm,
people around me. I grew up in a revolutionary type of area, age,
mm.
and folks that was like the Black Power area. So
Yes.
um, I think it shaped me in a positive sense. So I didn't, even though yeah, I was 20 and I definitely had that mindset, but
Hmm.
also it was the time of Black Power and everything.
Right.
So I didn't go into it the way that we see a lot of folks go
Wow.
into it these days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So here we are, early 90s. And now, how long were you a police a cop? I don't want to say
Well,
cop
I did.
because when I say cop, it sounds so derogatory because that's the way that's
No, no.
it's the cops 50. But so a police officer,
Yeah, yeah. So I did just under 20 total in all of
man.
law enforcement. I did over 10 in uniform, and then I wound up switching to plain clothes and did that for a number of years until I
Man.
was just like ready to get into something else, and I wound up getting into education.
So the let's talk about the contrast because because you know you know when you talk when people say, hey, I'm switching you know uh professions,
Right.
some, usually there's some similarities,
Definitely.
not they're
Yeah.
not the same thing, but you can see the transition. Like you can see, oh, I
Right.
can see how you
Right.
got into that. Oh yeah, you did this, so I can see how you got
Right.
into that. I'm trying to envision how this seasoned police officer, almost 20 years, says
Right.
one day says, I'm gonna be a teacher or I'm gonna be in education.
Right.
So
Well,
so
it
what
didn't
was
quite
the
work like that though. It didn't
okay.
quite work like that. I think probably, well, first maybe like my first year or so, one of the old timers. Back then it was like you had the old timers that probably never pulled their gun out. They were there for 20, 30 years and never pulled their gun out once. And yeah, it's
How? Wait a
hard
minute, for
to imagine.
real?
Yeah, hard to imagine.
In
But
Philly?
in Philly, well, this was
Man,
back. Remember? So then the
Yeah.
old
Okay. All right.
timers, they that was from a different era, and
Okay.
but one of them I remember told me, listen, go and get education because one
Okay.
day you might get shot or hurt, or you might
Okay.
just wake up one day like I'm not feeling this no more, and then you don't want to be like us and not have
Mm.
nothing to fall back on.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
And for me, I definitely took that to heart, and I wound up um, going to night school. And it's funny because at that age, I didn't listen to much else of what anybody told me, but that really has stuck with me enough that I was like, I do need to do something with my life.
Wow. Okay. So you start going to night school. You do
Right,
your time as a police officer, and at at whatever time.
right.
So to put in perspective, you're in your young 40s at this point, early 40s or late 30s, early 40s when you
Late,
decide to
late,
walk
late
away.
30s.
Late
Yeah,
30s.
late 30s.
So
I decided to walk away. Yeah.
you say, hey, enough of this. It was cool, but I definitely want to do something
Oh yeah,
different. Uh,
definitely.
when you chose education, what was the thought process? Was it okay? I because I can see you helping the community. The way you helped it for umpteen years, right?
You know, yes and no. And I think that was
Hmm.
part of it. Definitely wanted to help people build a better future.
Okay.
Um, but for me, it was really going back into, like I said, the way I grew up with the whole Black Power era and everything, and then
Hmm.
started learning how I got hired under the crime bill and everything, and what that was actually doing to our community. Because I'm not sure, I don't know if you're familiar with the crime bill, and it's funny. The more I
Hmm.
learn about it now, the more I'm like, man, I was actually a part of that, where we were actually incarcerating at such a high rate people that look like me, people
Right.
that didn't have the parents that actually told them, look, no matter what you're going to do, you're going to make it through.
Mm.
And even though I wasn't doing any of the things to actively harm them, I wasn't putting my hands on them, I wasn't cursing at,
Right.
but I
Right.
was still incarcerating them and not giving them any other opportunities. And for me, it was
Mm.
more like I need to pay that back to society,
Mm.
you know,
It's,
because I felt like now I have a debt that I owe my own community. And for me, it was like I was still able to help people get um, a better future. And honestly, I
mm-hmm.
still believe that education is probably one of the most powerful crime prevention and public safety tools that we have.
Wow.
So,
I'm
so I
trying to.
wound up doing it.
So and it's interesting you say that because I'm sure at the time you were, you didn't like you said, you didn't mean any harm. You didn't, do
No,
anything
no,
outside the ordinary, but you still felt that because you were just doing your job. Like
right.
it's not like, you put the badge on and said, I'm gonna put all of them in jail. I don't care.
Oh no, no,
I'm
I was
sick of
I was one thing that even to this very day, man, you super chill. I'm laid back, so it was like, yeah, you want to run, go ahead and run. I'll catch you later. Yeah, I was cool. I was, I remember, and it's funny now because I was like, man, that was a weird thing for the dude to say to me. I remember he was like, man, next time I get locked up, can you lock me up? It's like you was real cool about it. Like, bro, this, bro,
Well, man, first of all, you got plans to get locked up again.
yeah.
That's and you plan on doing this again. And second of
Right,
all, you
right, right.
want
But
me to lock you up. All right, man.
listen, when we talk about full circle though, I was my area was the projects and everything in West Philly. Fast forward about 20 plus years, I wound up teaching in West Philly. And a lot of the students that I had came from the exact same communities. And I honestly, without exaggeration, was actually teaching the grandkids, some of the grandchildren of the folks that I had locked up. And that's
Wow.
what I'm talking about full circle. And when I learned that, when I started learning like who the family were, and I'm like, man, I know, wow, I really know that guy. and started
Wow.
like, oh man, I remember this family,
Right.
and just seeing how all connected everything was, it really was powerful, for me.
Wow. So, and you're teaching at this point. Like you're in the
Yeah.
classroom, or you're
Yes.
in the teaching. So you take off the badge, take off the uniform. You're teaching, like you said, you're teaching the grandkids of some of the people that you
Mhm.
came in contact with throughout the years, and
Mhm.
and things of that nature. As you're going through this time of your life, is that when it came to you and said, man, you know what, I affected these people in such a way that, because I can imagine you seeing these grandkids, right, and the
Yes.
situation that a lot of them might have been in, and was there a point where you said, man, man, I locked his grandfather up, or I locked his great, his uncle up, or something like that. And if
Oh
I would
yeah.
have given them another opportunity or another avenue, maybe this student wouldn't be affected the way they are.
Exactly, and that's what I'm talking about the whole redemption. I mean, listen, it's probably selfish, but it's more for me than for them, because it feels like I
Wow.
owe more back to that society than they definitely owe me.
Wow.
I was able to, um I contributed. Okay, great. Granted, yeah, they definitely committed the crime, but had they had the opportunities, had they had the education, had they had the things that I tried to provide since I got into education, then
Hmm.
maybe I would have been able to have one less, person to have locked up at that time.
Man. So now I mean, you've transitioned again. You know, and I didn't think about it till just now. So you've transitioned from law enforcement to the classroom, and then you basically just combined the two of them,
Yeah,
and you are now a principal. and and
yeah.
and and you know what, before we even go through, for those that don't know what because you mentioned the crime bill earlier, and for
Hmm.
those that don't know what the crime bill, that was a bill that was signed into effect by Bill Clinton, 94.
Bill Clinton,
um and
author. I can't say author, but mainly driven by Joe Biden.
yeah, so, and
And didn't know
it's
none of that at the time. I'm just some black kid in
yeah.
the hood that needed a job.
So and yeah, that was a $30 billion bill
Yes,
that was
yes,
signed into effect, that
yes,
went to I guess funding law enforcement, and as they so eloquently put, keep get criminals off the street. Just so happened
yes.
that a lot of those criminals look like us.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah.
but that just for those that may not have even understood what the crime bill was. So now let's get back to you. So you've now combined those two, and
Yes.
I didn't even know. Forgive my ignorance, but I didn't know, because and we chopped it up before we started the show, and I asked you. I said, I want to make sure I'm reading this right. Like, a principal in an adult correctional facility. Forgive my ignorance, because I didn't even know that was a thing. Because when
Right,
we say
right. Yeah.
principal, I'm thinking high school, but it
No.
I'm thinking high school students. I'm thinking, you
Right,
know, uh, brick and mortar school. There's
right.
students, there's teachers.
Oh,
Of
there's
course, there's a
students. There's
principal.
teachers and students. Yeah, yeah.
So forgive my ignorance. I didn't even know that was a thing. But you're a principal, and
Mhm.
my assumption, uh, I'm not even going to assume. I'm going to let you tell us what those duties consist of.
It's funny because people are often surprised that it's a real school. Um, but we have adult basic education, we have
Okay.
GED preparation, career and technical education, college opportunities. Brothers are walking out of there with their college degree, their
Man,
associates. We just right now, we're in the process of finalizing the bachelor program
man,
there, so folks are able to walk out with their bachelor's program. I mean, with their bachelor's degree. Um, and my role is pretty much just to support our educators and oversee all the programs. And it's a place where learning can happen, but a lot of it is, um, I tell people it's the best kept secret and the most rewarding job out there. You know,
I
we got a
can,
captive audience.
and I see that because I
Yeah.
did not know. I can see it being rewarding, and it
Oh
definitely,
yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, one of the best kept secrets. Because I was like, I'm reading this wrong. Like,
Right.
there's
Right.
no way there's a principal in a correctional facility.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. So so I'm and the reason I see this as being so powerful is because I've interacted with some people that have been incarcerated in their past, and
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of them, they come out with the belief that, "Well, I screwed up, I messed up, my life is, it is what it
Yeah.
is. It ain't gonna get
Yeah.
no better because,
Yeah.
my opportunities are gonna be second to none, and they're gonna see my record. Ain't nothing I can do about it." Which is
Hmm.
a lot of times why they get out, things are tough for them, and they end up going right back in.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
what are some of those pitfalls, those hurdles? Because as you're dealing with these young men, um and they're, number one, is it tough to get them interested in education? Like, is there a
It
mindset
is.
process?
Oh, it definitely is. Now, I do have one big thing going for me that it's a state correctional institution and not a
Okay.
county. So, I
Okay.
mean, that mindset shift from being from county to state, they already know that they're looking at some time. You know, they by the time they get to the state, they might not still be all right with it, but
Right.
they know that they're going to be there for, they're going to be there for a minute.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and for me, one of the biggest things that me and the teachers and everybody in education we have to deal with is the trauma. We got to address it.
Mm.
They come with a lot of trauma. I
Yeah.
mean, the trauma from whatever violence and growing up that or lack of growing up that they experienced. They're bringing all that into the classroom.
Mm.
And one program that we actually, as kind of like a sidebar here, is one of the programs that they actually have um at our facility is they bring they partner with the school district and they allow the teachers, a group of teachers from Philly, to actually come in and hear the guys' experiences. And then they actually taking the teachers are actually taking that back into the school district and being able to apply that to make sure at least the students that they're going to have in front of them, that they're able to recognize and be able to support them before, in hopes that it doesn't get that, it doesn't come to the level where they're incarcerated or anything like that. But that all comes up to our doorstep. And one of the biggest challenges that I face is we're up on a wing. When they
Hmm.
get up there on that wing, you leave all that. Look, I know I'm well aware that it's a prison, but
Right.
we're not bringing that mentality up here. And one thing I'm really like stern on them about is don't bring it here. Okay, it
Mm.
happened. What else? All right, so what's now? What's now? You're a cool guy, but I don't want to see you come back up here anymore. So I focus a lot on making sure that I bring folks in that address trauma and things that to make sure that that they don't come back.
Right.
I want to make sure, like as far as literacy, that they're good for literacy, that they
Mm.
have the skills and the things that they need, so that they don't want to come back. And that's why I'm so hard on them about the education. I try to bring as many colleges in there as possible to make sure that they have as many opportunities because I don't want to see them back.
Right.
Because I think the statistic is about roughly about 85% of the population that's incarcerated is eventually going to come back on the street. So
Right.
I remember back in the day,
Wow.
back when we were growing up, folks were able to get PhDs in prison, but some jokers stopped it. But and in hindsight, well, do you want them to come back out there and uneducated and do the same thing again? Well, you probably do because it's
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but we don't want that. Though they're our neighbors. we're going to be buying groceries from them. There are Uber drivers. There are going to be, the people walking up and down the street.
Yep.
So do you want them to be what they were when they went in, or do you want a better version coming out?
Exactly. And doesn't that go back to the whole term of rehabilitation?
Yes.
That word is thrown around so much, especially when we talk about our prisons. It's oh,
Yes.
they're being rehabilitated, but yet the rehabilitation is being taken from them, and
Oh yeah.
they go out sometimes worse than what they came in, and we
Yes.
expect miracles. I don't know.
Yes.
Wow. But I find it commendable and incredible that you're taking such a passion to be and I know it's got to be. Let me ask you this: how long have you been doing that? Because I can envision you coming across a few people that you like no, like, bro, what you doing here? Like
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Oh sure.
and like that, yeah, and so that's got to be like when you see somebody that you actually have had some type of a relationship with, and they're coming through that, and I can imagine you feeling even more of a passion to use the term again, rehabilitate
You
and
know
and
what?
and get these
Honestly,
guys.
this might sound crazy.
Hmm.
That doesn't bother me as much as the ones that I see myself in.
Okay. And no, and
You
who are
know what I'm
those?
saying? The younger ones that are now coming through.
Uh,
Because one thing that we're seeing, and this might not be no surprise to you, is right now we're seeing a mass influx of younger people coming into and doing heavy state time. Heavy. In
mm,
some ways, it's good. In some ways, I mean, always is bad. But
right,
from an education standpoint, it's challenging because a lot of them they went through a lot of high school,
right.
so they don't need GEDs. And they're looking at a whole bunch of time. So now it's like you got to find other ways to get at them. If they come in
Mm.
without a GED or a high school diploma, then they're considered a mandatory student. So then they have to be up there.
Oh, that I did not know. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah.
you and you when you use that term mandatory, I'm sure you got some individuals that are like, I don't want to be here. I was forced to be here.
100%.
That's a
They cut class. They'll
can't
cut
how.
class and they'll go out to the yard and this and that.
Oh, I didn't know.
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't know that was a possibility. I thought,
Well, it's not. I'll go out to the yard and get you.
oh, okay, all right. Because I'm like, man, it's mandatory. You're in prison. How can you
Yeah,
cut
yeah.
class?
It's just like on the street. It's just like, well, I don't. I'm not feeling it, but I'll go get you because
uh,
I'm going to
wow,
just keep. I'm not going to let you give up on yourself, and I'll carry your cares and worries until you can carry them for yourself. But you're going to
man,
get what you came here to get.
wow, wow, uh, wow. Um, that's commendable, man. I commend you for the work you're doing in there, man. It's something that we probably wish we'd have in prisons nationwide, and if every prison had a Khalid in there, we might be all right. We might be all right. Let's talk about so you got a couple of articles, and there's one that
Yes,
you put out on LinkedIn, the hidden curriculum that
yes,
silences fathers and what
yes,
I learned leading a school inside prison. Talk
yes,
about that a little bit because that pretty much talking about fathers that are being incarcerated
yes.
and some of the things that they're going through in silence. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, a lot of that is when you talk about when they're getting out and them having that negative stigmatism. I mean, if they're coming out of my facility, I'm doing my absolute best to make sure that they're set up for success.
Hmm.
But when they hit the streets, like you said, a lot of society, a lot of times they might um look at them, they might look down on them
Right.
as you
Right.
know, they're like, oh, well, you were in prison, you're this,
Yeah.
you're that.
Yep.
And so for me, it's just about nobody talks about it. The schools a lot of times they'll focus on the mother
Mm.
and not the father.
Mm.
This is not even necessarily about being incarcerated. I mean, do you have kids?
I do. Yes.
So I mean, listen, I'm a dad, and sometimes if my wife's not available to take the kids to the doctor,
Hmm.
and I got to take them, they start asking a bunch of questions. They don't even. They're like, "All right, we'll just wait for mom, or you want to call mom?" And I'm like, "Well, sometimes it's good because yeah, I really don't know. I'm at
Yeah.
work. Probably should know. It makes you feel bad, but the presumption is dad don't know nothing,
Exactly.
or where's mom? Or just this whole thing. And for us, I see how they treat us, but it's even worse when you've already got some strikes against you.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so I talk about that with the hidden curriculum and just the way that society treats fathers, the way that a lot of times it's not said, but it's said in, well, is mom available? Or um schools when our guys get back on the street, trying to educate them that they can get back involved in their child's life,
Hmm.
sending out those emails, introducing yourself, getting involved in like going to school board meetings, but just being present so that the school is forced to deal with you,
Right.
in a positive sense, getting involved in your children's lives, and just being able to educate folks on that. And as a matter of fact, that's where the shelter really came from.
I was headed
The
that
book,
way.
The Shelter, you know?
I was headed that way, but
Right,
beautiful segue. I was headed that way, but since you've already go ahead.
right, right,
So the shelter is your book
right.
that you've that I see it's ready. I was going to be a question because that was written this year, right? I wasn't sure if it was ready yet or whatever, but as you can see,
Yes.
it is ready. So talk
Well,
about the shelter a little bit.
it came out this year. It was
Oh,
written.
okay.
Yeah, it came out this year, and the shelter actually explores fatherhood, responsibility, forgiveness, and redemption. It's a fictional book, but
Right.
I wanted to write a story that people could see themselves in.
Mm.
And whether you're talking about fatherhood, whether you're talking about responsibility, forgiveness, and redemption, these are all things that we all see in ourselves.
Right.
And the hope is that people walk away knowing that people can change and that people are able to grow. And that's why I actually wrote The Shelter, and and those articles that the ones that you've seen. It's funny though. You talk about the articles. There is actually one um, that I'm working on where I talk about the lessons that you learn in the prison classroom that they're still not getting about in a traditional classroom. And that's talking about the trauma and the experiences that a lot of folks have, um, that the schools are not even addressing when their students walk through the door. So
And
one of the
and when you say
biggest things,
schools, you're talking about when you say schools, you're talking
regular
about
schools on the
regular
street,
schools.
the
Okay.
regular
All right.
schools on the street. And
Okay.
actually, I'm trying to get more teachers to recognize that when those students are walking through the door, black, white, purple, whatever it is, that they're walking through with baggage.
Yeah.
COVID did a number on our kids,
Whoa.
a
Yes.
number. And I was teaching at that time. And I
Mm.
remember just being, online and trying to keep my, because I was was in the school district at that time.
Hmm.
So trying to keep my kids motivated, my students motivated, but actually getting invited into their house through the computer and actually seeing how they lived and the trauma that they actually experienced. Because I mean,
Mm.
there weren't the filters, there weren't all these things,
Yeah.
we it was just, everything was just on the spur of the moment. So we
Yeah.
actually got a lens inside a lot of these students' houses and the way that they live, and you were able to see the trauma and the things that they were bringing to that classroom, and they were trying to carry it every single day and still be present as students.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times, um, school was their only solace. That was
Oh yes,
for a lot of them, school was the only place they got a decent meal. They got,
absolutely,
you know, time to, you know, escape what they, might be going through at home, whatever it be, and
absolutely, absolutely.
that was just wiped out in record timing. And yeah,
Mhm.
that was yeah, yeah. So now you talk about you were talking about fatherhood and you know how that you know you try to get these young men equipped
Yeah,
and ready to
yes,
become present fathers
yes.
as they are leaving the institution.
Hmm.
A lot of times, it's my understanding that a lot of times the mother is not 100% receptive
Hmm.
to accept, this individual back
Right,
into her life and
right,
the child's life because
right.
that is a minor child. You're going to be,
Sure.
you know, how do you what are some of the things you do to prepare them both mentally and emotionally to deal with, for albeit all pretenses and purposes, rejection from
Hmm.
from possibly the child and the mother?
Having those realistic conversations with them. Like when I was talking about earlier about getting involved in like school board meetings. Well, mom
Right.
can't stop anybody from getting, to go into a school board meeting. And truth be told, I done been to tons of school board meetings. There's plenty of room when you go sit down in here. People
Yeah.
don't go,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because if they actually went, things would start to change.
Mm.
But getting involved in things like that, they can't necessarily stop you, and just pretty much advising these fathers on their rights,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, mom can stop you from necessarily maybe stopping you from uh, having active participation with the child, taking the child out, or what have you. But you writing an email to the school, to the teacher, unless there's something very specific, there's nothing stopping you from at least making sure that you're keeping that open communication. There's
Mm.
nothing at all stopping you from that, unless the law is specific. And we're educating the fathers on that, because a lot of them don't know that. They just think that they can, that okay, mom says that I can't be around them, and then that's it. Well, you still have other avenues.
Mm.
Tell them to mail you out the school, the monthly calendar of what events are going on that you can try to be a part of, or just even if you're apart from a sideline, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, well, I can't be there because of X, Y, and Z, but I can send in some cupcakes if y'all having a cupcake sale, or I could do this, or I could do that. Just what we tell them is to be present. And
Mm.
and that's one of the biggest things that we talk about responsible fatherhood. It's not about perfection, it's about just being present.
Mm. I, I like that. It's not about because growing up. Let's just be honest. As a child, you kind of look at your parents as, well, they're parents, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we give them, we have this false sense of perfection, like you said, perfection. Like
Right,
that's mom and dad, right? Like they got all the
right,
answers. Like I can
right.
remember, my father passed when I was 15, but I remember I remember growing up and the other guys in the neighborhood, we'd be out, playing, whatever, doing whatever we do. And then,
Right.
at the end of the game, whatever we have, we just be talking. And if we get into a heated debate or discussion or whatever, and I'd always haul off, be like, we can go ask my dad. And I remember, I remember one of them. We had this conversation, and one of the guys in the neighborhood said, "You just think your dad know everything, don't you? Yeah, I mean, you just that dude. You just think he knows
Right,
everything." And it hit me
right.
like, "Oh shoot! oh, maybe I need to chill with that. Maybe I, I do, but we, we crown them, with this aura of perfection, and it's brilliant how you said it's not about perfection, and
Right.
I think growing up, we think we have to be perfect. We have to be,
Right.
and there's no such thing. It's impossible. Um,
Right. Exactly.
and parenthood is something you do on the fly. Let's be let's be honest.
Oh yeah.
You're shooting from the hip, and it's I think that's incredible. It's like you said, it's not about perfection. It's about being present. That's that's powerful. Um, so you also have a publishing company, right?
Yes. Plain
So
sight
and so
press.
you publish your own books, right?
Yes.
So that's the definition of forest bias, by the way. But that's the very definition, yeah. So talk about because talk about your publishing company because it, I'm I'm I really, and I don't want to get too far off base, but is that something you kind of teach in there as well? Because so many people will say, I want to do this, but I can't do this because X,
As a
Y,
matter of
Z.
fact, it's funny. It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because, as a matter of fact, yes. Um, because again, we address so much about trauma, and then because we're men, and men are
Mm-hmm.
taught we don't express our feelings, so then write them down, and then
Mm,
so then that's dealing with the literacy. Um, Making sure that they're learning how to read, making sure that they're learning how to communicate. Um, we had one thing that I learned. One thing that I learned is that, and I'm not being biased, or maybe I'm being biased,
mm,
but I have the most talented individuals that come into that classroom. It
wow.
blows me away how smart they are. And it's a shame that it took them to whatever lows for somebody to see how brilliant a lot of them can be.
Wow.
And so summertime is kind of like slow down because we have a lot of partnerships with like colleges and universities. So then there's not too much movement on there. So in the summertime, I'm like, all right, I got to focus on something else. So I bring a lot of book clubs, a lot of writing and stuff like that. And because I want you to be able to learn how to write, I want you to, once you write it, then it's like, well, you're doing all these different things, so then put it out there. So I want you to
Mm,
learn how to actually publish it. I want My goal is to make my department's institution like the plate the mecca for learning as best as it can be for a
mm-hmm.
department of corrections.
Man.
And I want people to walk away from there being far more educated, far more ready to take on whatever society gives at them, throws at them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely something that we teach. Definitely.
There could be somebody listening or watching this episode um, that possibly didn't get anything that like you offer in you know during their time and during their incarceration. They didn't get that. They didn't get that positivity. They didn't get that information. They didn't get the resources or to to function out when when they got out. They didn't get that. What's one thing, actually two things, but what's one thing that you would tell them, and then that's the A side, and then the B side, um what would you like to tell them personally, and the B side is what would you give them professionally, putting on your principal hat. um could you direct them to maybe take step one, maybe seek out some assistance with some programs or something like that? So the first one personally, the second one professionally.
I'd say personally, I tell them that other people's opinions don't have to be your identity.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, um, because your past only explains part of the story, and that's like what I said earlier about okay, this happened, now what? That was that chapter. That's not your future. So you need to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
You know, invest in yourself. Learn. You got to learn how to read. Um, find some mentors. We're big on mentors. Stay connected to positive people. Um, I mean, small decisions repeated consistently over time can completely change the direction of a life.
Mm,
And never stop believing that your next chapter can be better than your last. Um, if you have nothing else out there, um, and you're trying to figure out the best way professionally, what I would tell somebody professionally is, man, the libraries have so many resources in them,
and
so many.
that's interesting you said that because that is such a dying institution. Um, everybody's going to audiobooks and
Right,
things of
right.
that nature. Yeah,
But
but
they're
that's I didn't mean to
free.
cut you off, but that's amazing.
They're
Yes,
free. They're free, and
yes,
they have so many resources there. If you're not technically uh savvy, they have they're free. And if they don't have them
yeah,
at that
yep,
particular branch, they can direct you to where the resources are.
hmm
Don't spend money if you don't have to.
mm,
Right now we're living under an administration that doesn't value any real education anyway. So go to a library, where you can get that stuff for free, and
mm,
enrich your mind. Um, and the librarians, that would probably be the that's what I tell people the most. I tell them that the most, inside our institution, take advantage of the libraries. Every time I go to my library at my institution, the law library side is always packed, of course, but the reading side is empty.
wow,
You know,
wow.
and
So basically, what you're saying is they're focused on finding a way out as opposed to preparing for when they actually they're trying to get
I'm
out
telling you
early.
that I would dare to strongly argue, that the reading side of that library is probably just as important, if not more important,
Mm,
than going and looking up some cases.
wow, wow.
Because unless you on that reading side and learning how to improve yourself, okay, your case comes back tomorrow and you're ready to go outside. What do you have?
What do you do? What do you? Yeah, wow, wow. Preparation is key. I mean,
Oh,
that's
definitely,
planning is
definitely.
that's a lost art in itself. Especially in a society where everybody wants something right now. The microwave society, I think that's what they call it. But man, tell if you would be so kind, tell everybody how can they contact you? How could they reach out? Like if there's somebody listening saying, "Man, I wish he would have been, principal in my institution where I was in. That's what I needed." Um, how can they reach out and maybe ask questions? How can they reach out and read your books, your literature, your articles? How can they just find um, Khalid Ashraf?
Well, I mean, books, of course, you can go on Amazon, and you can grab a copy of the book. LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, out there. Plain Sight Press is on Instagram. Plainsightpress.org is the website, so you can always send a message there. Um, and look, whether you're inside the institution, you're in another state, reach out to me. Look, if I can help you, I'm going to help you. I don't. I'm not bound by location.
Mm,
Um, and I'll do the homework and finding some resources out there. But one thing I always tell folks is, people always want to tell you the bad news. Make sure you come back and tell me when you succeed also,
hey,
because that's just
facts.
as,
Yeah.
as important to me.
Yeah.
You know,
We always would you say you always get the bad news, but when things
right,
go right,
right,
you radio silence.
right, yeah,
Hey, I guess that's what they used to say. All no news is good news.
right, right.
But again, man, Mr. Ashraf, I appreciate you stopping through. This was an incredible conversation. Remember, everybody, hey, go out there, support Khalid Ashraf. The novel that he has out, The Shelter, you can find it where books are sold, Amazon, probably Barnes and Nobles. All there it is, right there. Um, you know, hey, good reading. I'm gonna ask for. When we get off here, I'm gonna ask for my signed copy. I guess I just kind of did,
Of course,
but
yes.
I guess I just kind of did. Hint, hint. But go out there and support this brother and the work that he's doing for our black men during incarceration. I think it's amazing. It's one of those things that somebody special has to be called to do, because everybody isn't equipped to do something like that. And you clearly, brother, um, this you found your calling. You found your calling, and man, we wish you nothing but the best. All right. And that's a wrap for today's show, everybody. Thank you again for supporting the Lifestrong Project. Thank you for tuning in to Khalid Ashraf and myself for this conversation. As always, please remember to go out, like, subscribe. Join got a lot of stuff going out for the Lifestrong Project and Culture Signal Media. We'll get into that later, but go out there and see. We've got apps coming out and things like that. The signal is coming soon, so please support, like, join the movement, join the community that we're trying to build. And like I said, on behalf of Khalid Ashraf and myself, we appreciate you stopping through. And remember, your life is fleeting. You have to cherish it. Your life is ever changing. You always have to adapt. And most of all, your life is yours. You have to live it. Again, on behalf of Khalid Ashraf and myself, this is a wrap. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Lifestrong Project.